Friends, colleagues, listeners, here we are again. We've got another series of private aviation podcasts, and on this particular episode, we've got Dawit Lemma, who's the founder and CEO of Krimson Aviation from Ethiopia. Dawit, lovely to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, right. For those that are listening now straight away, there is a little bit of a delay, so please bear with us. It's definitely going to be worthwhile, I promise you. So Dawit, if we can start, please, if you can just give us a little bit of background of who you are, where you've come from, and why you've ended up in Ethiopia with Krimson.
Thank you, Chris. I'm originally from Ethiopia. I was born here in Ethiopia. I left Ethiopia when I was a young kid. Traveled all around the world, Zambia, US, Switzerland, because of my father's work. Fell in love with aviation when I was 7 years old, or probably before that, because when I was 7, I remember telling my parents that when I grow up, I wanted to be a pilot or a cowboy. And I was told then that a cowboy was not really a career choice. So that defined my direction of aviation pretty much from the set. Obviously, I was educated mostly in the US, where I studied aeronautical engineering, got my CPL, my pilot's license, my airframe and power plants license, started my career as an intern in Detroit Metro Airport, and then actually ended up in Switzerland, where my parents were at the time. That was around 2003. While I was waiting to do my master's, I ended up volunteering to go to Afghanistan to work for an NGO that did humanitarian flights. So that was kind of my first real job. Was actually in Kabul, building an aircraft hangar and working as a mechanic on King Airs. When I came back, I started my master's in aviation, and then started my full career at TAG Aviation as a handling agent. And from there, worked many years. And then as around 2007, 2008, started coming back to Ethiopia for holiday. And of course, I knew about Ethiopian Airlines and the success of Ethiopian Airlines, but Ethiopia was just starting to really come out of its shell at the time.
Yeah.
And I decided I think it was time to come back to Ethiopia. And I was recruited initially by Ethiopian Airlines to be a well, it was interesting coming from a business aviation or general aviation background into the commercial airlines was quite interesting in the sense that when I went through my recruitment, they were like, so what do you want to be, a pilot, a mechanic, or or a manager? And I said, well, all three. No, I can't do all three. I can't be, because I'm so used to that, especially in general aviation. They're like, no, you have to choose. So I chose to be a first officer. I was on the 737, but it didn't sit well. I couldn't swallow it. Just couldn't. It just was like, I don't want to sit in a cockpit the rest of my life. So I ended up turning down the offer. This is around 2011. And I started working with a smaller operator, National Airways, who had PC-12s, which is my favorite aircraft in the world to fly. And so I got to do what I wanted to do, was fly when I needed, fly a little bit here and there. I worked, marketing is a passion of mine. So I was actually the director of marketing. So I was in the office as well. And whenever the aircraft was in maintenance, I used to run out to the airport and help the mechanics out, turn a few wrenches. So that was a lot of fun for me. I enjoyed it. And eventually I got married, and my wife looked at me as like, why are you?
Hold on, let's say something else for as we're getting through it. So right, firstly, thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction.
Yeah.
We'll come to the marriage. We'll come to the marriages of Africa Private Aviation and your good lady partner. We'll do that in a second. But it's interesting you said that you be either a pilot
Excellent.
or a cowboy. And I've been a long time in this industry.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, I never thought I'd come across as many cowboys as I have. So in England, the term cowboy is somebody who doesn't do something as well as they should do, shall we say. So there's plenty of opportunities to meet cowboys still.
Yes.
Now, can I just?
That's true. That's true. Actually.
Yep. Sorry, we'll get used to this. We'll get used to this delay to and fro in a minute. I just want to ask you something now. Now, when you travelled all over, so there's a saying that you've got a blend between the Swiss efficiency and the landscape of Ethiopia. Okay, so you've seen an awful lot. What was it that inspired you to start up Krimson?
As I was mentioning earlier, I think I saw an opportunity here. Actually, I think my wife probably saw it before I did, but there was no real business aviation or focused, someone who had the background like I did, who understood business aviation, supporting business aviation flights in Ethiopia or in the region. I think the misconception or lack of awareness between the difference between a 737 or 777 and a Challenger, I saw that. I saw there was a gap. And that's really what encouraged me to want to start Krimson. I said, okay, what we'll do is we'll start with just doing flight support, so supporting the aircraft that are coming into Ethiopia. And I did it's interesting because what I did was I actually just applied everything I learned at my first employer at TAG when I was a handling agent. I just thought of the lessons I learned there, how can I apply here? Yeah, and I remember the first rule I learned back in Geneva was the most important. The client on the aircraft is the crew. The passengers are important, but your client is the crew. And I started taking that perspective and making sure the crew were getting all they needed. And that's really, I think, how everything kind of started and took off from there. Building the reputation that there's someone in Ethiopia that understands your requirements, those coming from outside, but also someone who understands the language and understands what needs to be done from a local perspective.
And can I ask you, you said that your wife probably picked it up before you do. Is she in the industry as well?
No, she's actually a civil engineer. She's in the construction industry, but she always wanted to be a pilot, ironically. But she was too short. When she went to Ethiopia Airlines to apply, they said that she didn't fit the height regulation, which is strange. But yeah, so she picked up on it because I would always come home and talk about the experiences I was having, and maybe comparing to in Geneva, this is not how it's not how you treat a pilot of a Challenger or whatnot. So I think she just kind of maybe from hearing my experiences while I was working for the private operator here, she could see that there was the gap and maybe I should do something about it.
Okay, which is very good. And I'm sure you thank her every year.
Yes, 6 years now, every year. 1st of February is our anniversary, the company's anniversary. So
brilliant. Can I ask you now, is there any significance with the name Krimson?
Yes, Krimson actually, here when you're registering a company in Ethiopia, they force you to come up with a very unique name, unless you name it after you. So I didn't want to call it Dawit Lemma Aviation. I just didn't. It was not enticing to me. So you have to come up with a very unique name. So when I was in university, I was part of a fraternity, and the colors of the fraternity were crimson and cream, but they spelled crimson with a K because the fraternity was Kappa Alpha Psi, and that was actually I was involved in the fraternity, from beginning to the end of uni, where I was secretary. So the minutes. I learned a lot about running a business during chapter meetings. I was involved at the provincial level on the board of directors, undergraduate board of directors. So it's kind of homage to that, because I always feel like I learned the rules, the gears of running a business back then. Whether it's organizing meetings, balancing budgets, organizing events, et cetera, et cetera. I just kind of learned the real world applications of running a business through that. So I said I'd just give homage to that.
And then with the Swiss influence, that just gave that extra polish and shine on top of that. Huh?
Absolutely.
So now, can I ask you, taking all of those skills, is that why you wanted to be involved in the African Business Aviation Association?
Yes, I think I remember when I first met the previous executive director, Radi Fahmy, I met him at a conference.
Yeah.
And they'd given us, they were talking about what they wanted to do in Africa and business aviation, the state of business aviation in Africa. And I just said, I want to be part of this organization. I want to participate and also how do you say, share my knowledge and experiences, because again, what they were talking about was that gap, that gap that the reason I started Krimson, and what they were talking about was very, very, very similar. So I said, this is an organization that I need to be part of, but also I wanted to always be part of something much greater than myself, not just Ethiopia, but the continent as a whole. I just felt very drawn to that on a personal level.
It's amazing, and as a result of that, obviously with your passion, you've got a genuine desire to change things and to improve things in Africa, obviously, but primarily with your focus chapter in Ethiopia.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people do is they generalize Africa as a one big continent, which is, it's okay, but it's 52 countries. Obviously, I am focused on Ethiopia. Started as focusing on Ethiopia. Now I've expanded a little bit in the region into the Horn, but always keeping my eyes on the prize of the whole of Africa. I think as much as we can act on micro, we have to remain also focused or keep on the back burner the macro, and how our actions on the micro level will affect or implement or improve the macro level. And I'm very, very passionate about improving, or let's say creating awareness about business aviation on the continent, as an economic driver, as a business tool.
Yeah, no, 100%. And also the fact that, with growing economies, you've got several of the top 10 in Africa itself, of which Ethiopia is the biggest of the African representatives. So there's an awful lot of opportunity, and what Ethiopian Airlines has done as well, and bringing up the profile of the country, I mean, it's incredible. Now, what I just want to ask you, if you can just explain why you feel that private aviation is so complementary to the legacy carrier.
Well, I think we saw that in action, actually. Unfortunately, we've all had a very rough year in 2020 with the COVID pandemic. But the silver lining, if I may say, with the pandemic is actually twofold. The first is just creating awareness of what business aviation is, because that's how people could get around. People who never flew on a private aircraft understood the value finally of what business aviation is about. But that segues very neatly into what happened with the airlines, especially here in Ethiopia. Ethiopian Airlines was one of the few airlines globally, not just in Africa, that really did its best to maintain whatever routes it could, and remained a lifeline, if I can say, for passengers and for cargo moving around in the continent, and moving in and out of the continent, but only from Addis Ababa. So all their African destinations were pretty much shut down. So the European destinations were open, North America, South America, a few in Asia. So those who wanted to leave Africa, whether it's expats wanted to leave Africa, or Africans who wanted to come back into Africa, they could get so far as only to Addis Ababa, Addis Ababa Airport, which is Ethiopian Airlines' hub. But what we saw was embassies, companies, individuals were chartering aircraft. We saw from caravans all the way up to Dreamliners being chartered to bring passengers to Addis Ababa, or take passengers from Addis Ababa to somewhere else in Africa. And for the first time, I think not just Ethiopia Airlines, but I think the commercial airline industry really saw that business aviation is not a competitor to commercial aviation. It's a feeder. It complements. And it's unfortunate that we had to come to such a serious condition, such as a pandemic, for them to finally see it. But like I said, I think the pandemic, the silver lining for us in the business aviation sector, is that it created so much awareness about the value of business aviation, and not just, like I said, not just the aircraft type. I mean, It's not about the high net worth individuals and G5s and the globals. Caravans. We saw everything: caravans, Dornier, turbo. Dash 8s, Challengers. Of course, we had the Falcons. We had all of those coming through, but it was amazing to see all these different aircraft types being used for one purpose: chartering, a charter flight to get people from where they needed to in and out of Addis Ababa in order to interline with Ethiopian Airlines.
Yeah, no, I think what you said there about the fact that it's opened. Firstly, globally, everybody is now more aware of supply chain and the risks to it, and the appreciation now of just generally the aviation industry. But cargo has come to its fore, and I think another rising star, as you said, is private aviation, because without private aviation, so many of those evacuation and repatriation flights couldn't have happened. Plus some of the humanitarian, bringing people for treatments. It's an incredible thing that's happened, and I think long may it stand, because there's plenty of room, and the bigger the cake, that's what people should be looking at, instead of just protecting what they know, and they know only too well. So no, I think it's a great complementary element to the business. Now, something that's also, and when people think of Africa, they know it's such a huge continent, huge group of countries, and lots of the countries are very different in themselves. But when you look at it as a continent, there's been an awful lot of natural and man-made disasters. So private aviation comes into its fore there, whether it's medevac, whether it's evacuation, whatever it is. So it's a huge now part of the future of how quickly everybody can recover from this pandemic warning.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree on that. And also, just looking at the size of Africa as well, you have to consider Africa is a very, very big continent. You can fit Europe, or most of Europe, United States, China, and half of South America into the African continent. So getting around from point A to point B, lack of infrastructure, you can just say, roads, railroads, those are coming up. Don't get me wrong, but to get from point A to point B, sometimes, unfortunately, if you're flying to two neighboring countries, and they're actually neighboring countries, but you might have to fly to Paris or fly to Addis Ababa and connect and come back, just because there's no direct air link between the two countries. So the private aviation has now shown or created awareness to the regulators that this is really a tool. Instead of spending 18 hours to get from point A to point B, you can do it in 1 hour. And it doesn't have to be a business jet. It can be a Cessna 172 or a Pilatus, a PC-12. So it's really opening up everybody's eyes, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, I think it's got an incredible future. Now moving from primarily turboprop to to different fleets, how do you think that's going to map out now over the next few years?
I think what we're going to see now is we will see definitely an increase in, obviously, turboprops. There's already a ton of turboprops in Africa, but people are now seeing the use and the advantage of using an aircraft. So naturally, everybody will start small, but you're also starting to see a trend towards light jets. Maybe your light to mid-sized jets. Your Lear jets, your Citations, even your Hawkers. And those are enough to get you anywhere in Africa from point A to point B with one fuel stop. So I think naturally we will see that moving. I think the biggest, I'd say, hindrance to fleets, or let's say transition from turboprops to jets, will be financing, which is a problem anywhere in the world. But again, going back to the awareness, as banks, as regulators, as government bodies, civil aviation authorities, and financial instruments such as banks, national banks, see the value of business aviation, then financing will be made or appropriated for aircraft. Right now, if you want to go finance an aircraft, good luck finding a bank in Africa saying, sure, we'll finance your aircraft for you, unless you're some, of course, high net worth individual, or you're willing to put up collateral, You know, you put up here's my $10 million building. I'll put this up for collateral to finance my $2 million aircraft. That's what the situation is right now. So all of that tied together with awareness, always going back to what, you know, the awareness of what business aviation is, private aviation is, we'll start opening up minds. And I think that's the first step. Once that happens, we will start seeing, once the financing becomes available and aircraft are recognized as assets, not as liabilities, we'll see the growth, I say a faster growth into lighter jets, and then the beginning of medium, large jets. I think it's going to be a very organic growth, but like everything else in Africa, it's you know, it's almost like that parabolic growth. It's very slow growth at the beginning, and then all of a sudden the graph just shoots up. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing. I think we'll see the same trend with private aviation. Be very slow, a little bit of growth, steady growth, and all of a sudden floodgates will open, hopefully within maybe the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, no, that would be good. That would be good. Also, I mean, there's been a trend as well with the pandemic, and also with, you know, hygiene fears and the number of touch points. Private aviation reduces all those touch points, so it's also something that's very becoming very popular, because people are becoming more aware and they're conscious of their own safety. So obviously that's been a good point. Have you noticed the greater use of FBOs now for having meetings and, you know, organizations coming together and just coming straight in, having a decent FBO, then they can go off again and do things that were almost as normal as it was
before? We would if we had FBOs. No, there's very few countries that have FBOs. What we understand as an FBO, you know, the private terminal with, you know, with amenities and you know, the lounges and the business facilities and the hangars. Outside of South Africa and Nigeria, and then like Morocco, Tunisia, a lot of the northern African states, there are no FBOs in sub-Saharan Africa. Very few. And the main reason for that being CIQ, Customs, Immigration, and Quarantine. Governments do not want to give up or allow a private entity, or even if it's their own, a government separate terminal where Customs and Immigration is located. They want to keep all of that in one terminal, one area. So that's been the first challenge in developing or the bricks and mortar FBOs. We do have what we call VIP terminals. The VIP terminals are for protocol, you know, governments, states, heads of state. It's really just it is an FBO, but just for, you know, just states
for the
and government officials. But I think that's something that will slowly develop, because, you know, customs and immigration is a very sensitive topic. But now with the free trade agreements, the African free trade agreements, you know, the one market being implemented next year, you know, SATAM, the single air traffic market, as the 54 countries in Africa start thinking and moving as one machine, or trying to align all the gears to move as one machine, these are some of the things we'll see loosening up per se, which is, for example, the FBO. But I highly think it is critical that we have FBOs. I think it speaks to the experience of the passenger. I always use the anecdote with colleagues in Ethiopia and outside that, you know, if an investor is coming to Ethiopia on his big private jet, and he's coming to invest in Ethiopia, his first experience is going to be at the airport. As soon as he gets off his jet, to make him go through the terminal with the rest of regular passengers, you know, go through the same immigration line, the same customs procedures with thousands of other commercial airline passengers, his experience has already started off in a very, it's not that great. It's not, you know, he's not gonna be happy when he gets to his hotel. So that's the story I'm trying to, the anecdotes I'm trying to push. Like, as much as it's a quality of service, it's also a quality of experience, and a quality of image for the country.
Yeah, and also now it comes with the efficiency, with the sanitization, with all of the things that people are expecting. So it's got to start to catch the eye of all the highest positions within the country to support it. And that's
Absolutely.
and that's obviously something high on your agenda as the president of the African Business Aviation Association.
Yes, as not just the chapter, but also just for my company. I've people ask me, well, what's your vision? What's your dream? I said, it's always been to build an FBO here in Ethiopia. Oh, you don't want to be a pilot, you don't want to be an operator. No, I said, no, that can come, but my vision is to develop an FBO. It's just always, to have a hangar for maintenance, to have a facility for passengers, to be a facilitator for the sector to grow, because whether it's through aircraft management or whatnot or whatever, all the different aspects, having a hangar to be able to do maintenance for other service providers. I've always kind of seen myself as the facilitator or the glue that kind of helps other people grow, and that's really my vision and my passion and say dream, is to be able to develop a full-scale FBO here in Ethiopia, which will only help grow the sector.
No, that'll be yes, and a great challenge, but also a great target. Now, talking about targets, whilst I'm talking to you, I'm looking over your left shoulder, and I'm seeing that wonderful high-vis vest, which is framed with a degree of passion and memory, and obviously that's from your earlier times with TAG. Do you want to just give me a bit of a reason as to why that holds such a prominent place on your backdrop there?
Yeah, it was actually, it started off as a joke, actually. My last day at TAG, I was a ramp mechanic, P-staff, and that day I was wearing this same vest, and my team, instead of signing or wanting to give me a farewell card, they thought it'd be funny just to sign my vest with a little note. So that's kind of cool. And then throughout the day, as I was walking around the hangar or even just going to the handling department to say goodbye to my former colleagues, more and more people were like, oh, I didn't know you're leaving, or, oh, good luck. And they just started signing it. People and as the day passed, this more and more signatures. I felt like I was signing, like it was like a petition or something. And it was so heartwarming for me, because so many people, from the cleaning lady up to vice president signed this for me. And it almost became kind of, hey, have you signed Dave's jacket? Like, people came looking for me to sign my vest. And it was, when I left, I felt so happy that I felt so loved by so many people at that organization. I think I have over 50 or 60 signatures on this vest. But also, as I mentioned earlier, it reminds me of the lessons that I had there. What I learned at TAG Aviation, I'm actually applying today. And I think some of the successes that I've had in my company are based on what the lessons I learned in the maintenance department, in the handling department. Back then, 15 years ago, TAG was a bit of a pioneer. If you look at Farnborough Airport, aircraft management, it was a bit ahead of the game. And really, I learned a lot. And when I started Krimson, I just remember when I moved from Ethiopia to Geneva in 2012, I remember I was packing up my boxes and I found this, and I was like, oh, okay. One day I'm gonna hang this up in my office. And in 2015, when we started Krimson, this was one of the first things I hung up, actually. Got it framed and hung it up. And it serves as a reminder of those good days, of learning about business aviation, but also as a badge of honor for me. I remember we were in 2006, when I was still in the FBO in the handling department. We were voted FBO of the year in Europe. So it really definitely is something to be proud of, and kind of a memento of the past and of things yet to come, because of the lessons I learned at TAG.
Yeah, it's funny how certain things stick out in the past. I spent a lot of time at Lufthansa, and we always used to go to a training center called Zeeheim, and the training and the quality of the training and the benefits of mixing with colleagues from all over the world was something that has always stayed with me, and it's such an incredible experience and memory. It's brilliant. Now, at this moment in time, and coming out of COVID, everybody who knew what previous problems were and crisis, and they were looking at risk assessments and mitigations, etc. Nobody, I don't care who, doesn't matter what politician, what top businessman, nobody was prepared for what's happened. So now, looking forward, people have to be more aware to do things in a different way. Now, with your experience and obviously your memories with the high vis and what you're trying to do now and your vision for the future, what sort of style of leadership do you think has to be the new way moving forward?
I think the key words for me is one is holistic. Whatever we do, you can call it holistic, big picture. I think we just have to realize, and this is in our personal and our professional lives, that Newton's old law: for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I think we all need to realize that we're all intertwined. That the smallest, we talked about supply chain earlier, the smallest interruption on this end of the spectrum can have massive ramification on the other. So I think as leaders, we have to think more holistically, and think about our communities and our employees. We all get caught up in the grind, but I think COVID made us all stop. And I think reflect a little bit and prioritize a little bit about what's important. I think I think everybody globally has an opportunity to prioritize what's important to them personally, but I think we need to maybe apply some of those lessons and those priorities into our business lives as well, and really focus on those, and realize, it doesn't take much to bring the house of cards crumbling down. It really doesn't. So I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. Now I'm a big supporter of care. Consider all responsibilities everywhere, and if you care for your people and your people understand why they need to care for your business, then you get less damage, you get less maintenance, you got less loss, less waste of time, and then that brings sustainability and continuity.
Absolutely.
I think the new leadership or the new way has to involve everybody to understand, and all of us in life, we have to report to someone. So there's a new leadership concept, I think, that needs to teach people how to lead and structure and coordinate people in a different way, but also for everybody else to understand we have to be led. So how do you respond more effectively? So that word care, obviously, I'm glad you came up and you said about your people. Now, with that in mind, if I was to say to you, I've got another frame and another high vis vest, what do you think your staff would say on that vest now after the last 6 years?
I think they would say, and they always tell me that I'm not a typical boss. They always or the typical what they're used to here in Ethiopia, because I do care about them, and I'm there's an image that I have as a screensaver. There's an image of a boss where he's sitting on top of a chariot and he's got the whip and people are pulling the chariot, and then there's a picture below it. It says leader, and leader is in the front helping the staff pull this heavy chariot. And that's definitely, I think that's I'm quick to lead. I remember reading somewhere, a leader doesn't say, don't jump, go jump off that cliff. A leader says, a leader jumps and says, come on, let's go. So I think that's really what they'd say. Like I'm very involved on a personal level with them as well. I care very much about my employees and their families and their well-being. And this was before COVID. So I'd say that they would write, you're not like any boss you've ever had before.
I look forward.
I hear it all the time, actually.
I look forward to seeing that high vis. Now, on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, on that, and with that in mind, what are your personal objectives now for the next 2 to 5 years? What do you want to achieve in the next 2 to 5 years?
I definitely want to expand our regional reach. We're really strong in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa, but really expand into more of the rest of Africa with our brand of business aviation. Like I said, the brand that we've developed, Krimson, and the understanding, and hoping that brings awareness about what business aviation is. Also, on a personal level, I think I definitely would like to start. How do you say? I'm the founder and CEO. But in 6 years, I've been in entrepreneur mode. I would like now to move more to say CEO, like taking a seat back and letting my staff grow the business. Not being so involved in the nitty gritty. Focus more on development, business development, and strategy, and growing the business. But at the same time, growing it organically. This is my favorite word. Not forcing anything. Bringing a holistic approach. Not just growing my business, but helping others grow the sector together.
That makes a lot. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And you're in one of the best locations to start making a huge, big impact. And there's great opportunities ahead. But it's that care. It's that care that will mark people out as being successful, different, and people that others want to gravitate towards. They want to work for and they want to work with. Now, with regards to the One Africa concept. What do you think is going to be the biggest benefit as a result of that from next year?
I think with this new free trade agreement, it will alleviate the movement of goods and people. I think there was a statistic somewhere that like a lot of goods are traded outside of Africa, not inter-Africa, between countries. There's some goods and services that are sold to sold to a company in Europe and then resold to the neighboring country, because of the legislative or the tax system. It just doesn't make sense to trade. So I think that's there's going to be massive impacts from tax benefits, economic benefits, but the movements key and specific to aviation, the movement of goods and people will increase, and when that happens, naturally aviation is going to play a very key role in that. And I can see why they also are moving a parallel with the single aviation transport market. Basically, it's open skies in Africa alongside the free trade agreement, because it's going to be all about the movement of goods and people.
Yeah, no, it makes an awful lot of sense. And the quicker people open their arms to it and embrace it, I think the more efficient, the more productive, and the greater the reputation of the African community of countries will be.
Absolutely, we agree on that.
Now, coming to the end of the year, and with vaccines coming, and obviously it's at last we've got a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's no longer a train that's coming towards us at speed. As far as private aviation is concerned, I mean, I'm sure there's a role there with regards to distribution to some of the furthest points, whether it be domestically or across the continent.
Yes, I think road and railroad is not, the infrastructure is not quite there yet. I think delivery to the most remote areas will be definitely done by aircraft and helicopters, small aircraft, to regional hospitals, regional clinic centers, regional distribution. I think aviation has a critical role to play in the distribution of the vaccine here on the continent, because of the lack of road and rail transport.
Yeah, which is a huge thing. And then once, it's like, I think that's one thing that the whole globe has now also been brought together. And the more transparency, the more collaboration, the sharing of data, and the more everybody cares, because of the one overriding message, which is we're all safe when we're all safe.
Exactly.
Right, sir. Now we're almost at the end, and I know that you've got a very important call to attend to, so I don't want to keep you for too much longer. But just very, very open question now. If you had a magic wand, or you were able to say whatever should happen will happen within the next 2 years, what would be the 1, 2, or 3 key things that you would love to see happen that would make such a difference in the next two years?
It's working or developing or adding on to what we've seen already with COVID, without having to go through a pandemic. I would love for the awareness of the business aviation sector, the usage of an aircraft as a tool, to continue to span across regulators, aviation authorities, government bodies, and financing. I think what I would like to close with my favorite anecdote that I always use about what business aviation is in Africa. And it's an anecdote that Radi Fami, the former executive director of AFBAA, always used, and I will always use it. I love it. It's in Africa, business aviation is different. Let's start by saying that. But the definition of business aviation is a business tool, right? In Africa, a farmer who jumps on his Cessna 172 to get from the farm to the main trading post, which could be a full day's drive or 2 days drive away, but using his Cessna Caravan or Cessna 172, small single engine, piston engine aircraft, has actually conducted a business aviation exercise.
Yep.
And that understanding, that's for people to get that in Africa and outside of Africa. Well, that's if I could sprinkle magic dust, that is what I would love for people to really understand.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm sure, my friend, with the amount of care that you've got for your industry and also your company and also with your representative responsibilities, things will change, and they'll change for the good. I've spent quite a bit of time in Ethiopia myself. I've always had good time. Apart from on the occasion queuing to get into the country, being longer than to get back out again. But everything has always been, it's been a lovely place, lovely people. I look forward to seeing you maybe one day. And I'd like to just end by thanking you
Chris.
so much. Thank you. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on, Dawit. Really appreciate it and wish you great success.
Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. All the best yourself. Thank you. It was a real pleasure meeting you, and look forward to seeing you in person one day.